In this episode of Social Sessions, we're diving deep into the transformative world of prison reform with our extraordinary guest, Scottish filmmaker Mark MacNicol. Mark is not just a storyteller, but a changemaker who uses the power of creativity to drive social change. Through his innovative initiative, the Creative Change Collective, Mark has been at the forefront of projects that give a voice to the voiceless, especially those impacted by the criminal justice system. We'll explore his groundbreaking project, Anonymous Drama, which has been making waves with helping individuals struggling with addiction and those within the prison system to reclaim their stories and rebuild their lives. Mark's work is a testament to the power of creativity in fostering personal growth and societal transformation. Whether you're interested in social justice, filmmaking, or the arts, this episode is sure to inspire and inform. So, welcome to Social Sessions. Today we are joined with writer, film director and producer Mark MacNicol. So how you doing, Mark? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to just do all the guests, take you back to your own kind of childhood. Was it Glasgow you were born, Mark?
Glasgow, yeah.
Aye, whereabouts?
So I was born in Easterhouse, but moved. I think when I was a baby, I moved to Priest Hill.
Priest Hill.
And pretty much most of my childhood, I was brought up kind of Priest Hill, Pollock, South Nits, also kind of south side.
Aye. So what was that like growing up for you there? I know that was kind of, Pollock's kind of rough back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's rough parts.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm a scheme boy, you know. Priest Hill, Pollock, South Nits Hill. If you look at the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, 6,000 postcodes in Scotland ranked by deprivation. I think number 1 to number 999 are considered to be the most deprived in Scotland, and I think probably G53, which is where I was brought up, since I was born, has probably been top 100.
Oh, aye. No, that and Shettleston are kind of always been kind of thereabouts, and then you see them popped up now and again as the worst. Do you know what I mean? So were you involved in like the gang stuff and all that matter, or did you kind of stay away from all that?
It's an interesting one because I mean, I obviously everybody's different. Everybody's got their own kind of journey and stuff. But my childhood was probably a bit unusual in the sense that it was almost like I had two different worlds. So on my mum's side, scheme punters, living in Priest Hill, Pollock, South Nits Hill. On my dad's side, my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a pastor, born again Christian, evangelical, lived in Shotts. He was, not only was he a pastor, born again Christian, but he was also a very successful businessman, self-made, multi-millionaire, actually built his own church.
Wow.
Had his own business that did very well. And it was a real family business. My gran, she played the organ in the church, and she organised the flowers and the baking and stuff like that. And my aunt and uncle were like Sunday school teachers. And so I would spend Monday to Friday and weekends. So Monday to Friday with mum, weekends with her parents in Priest Hill. So I had the whole scheme thing going on kind of Monday to Friday and weekends. But then school holidays I would be with them in Shotts. And that was a completely different world.
It must have been for somebody so young quite hard to take in, eh? Like it was just that kind of the difference in class, and maybe not even class, but just the difference in wealth.
Yeah.
And being able to understand that, why is this here and why that's no here. How did that make you feel as a child?
I don't know. I suppose when you're a kid, you don't know any different. That's just the world that you're living in, But for me, my mum and dad were both alcoholics growing up. And they split up when I was young. My mum's sober now.
Aye. Done.
Well done, Janice.
Well done, Janice.
She's been sober for 25 years.
Brilliant.
But for the first half of my life, you know, her drinking. And, you know, I mean, I've done a couple of these podcasts and kind of maybe struggled a wee bit talking about it because she's still with us and we've got a good relationship and what's done is done, etc. But she's told me that she's totally fine with me, you know, talking about it and stuff like that. But it was challenging growing up in a single parent family with a mother who was an alcoholic. So to go from that experience to something so extreme where there was, you know, there was a lot of money and there was also the religious element because, you know, when I was there, I would be in church 3-4 times a week.
And are you still religious to this day, or are you more spiritual?
I'm spiritual. I mean, you know, growing up, I never bought Christianity. And I think when it came to me and Christianity, a lot of it was to do with me wanting to please my grandparents because they wanted me to be a born-again Christian and I wanted them to be happy. But at the end of the day, growing up, being exposed to Christianity and the Bible and the kind of evangelical message throughout my childhood, it just didn't work for me. And it wasn't until later in life that I discovered Zen, you know, kind of Zen Buddhism, self-awareness practice type stuff, which conversely was like a light switch. You know, when I started to kind of study those types of teachings, it resonated with me in a way that Christianity didn't. Now, I should say, you know, before we have the conversation that we are having today, that everything's my personal opinion.
Oh, of course.
So, see, when it comes to organisations that I'm involved with and that I work with and stuff like that, like I don't speak on behalf on behalf of anyone today other than myself, you know. So I, growing up, just kind of got a sense that religion was like organised crime. It was a racket, all of them. So I'm definitely not, obviously I'm not knocking, people are going to have their own beliefs and that's great, and I respect everybody's beliefs, but for me, I'm definitely not religious, but I definitely am spiritual.
No, and I think I would probably class myself as similar. I don't practice my spiritual work as much as I should, but I'm definitely with you on that. And I think anybody that can find solace in religion, good, on you go. And I think what we're all doing is basically finding the same thing. I think if somebody goes to chapel and they find that energy and they find that redemption, whatever it is they're looking for, then that's it. You should keep that. Do you know what I mean? If it's working for you. If it isn't, I think you should always be open to trying different things. But that's only my view on that. Yeah. So obviously growing up in probably more Pollock's kind of stuff, because obviously on here we kind of talk about the hard kind of upbringings and stuff. Were you involved in any kind of criminal activity or anything like that? Or
so it's interesting because so as a writer, the very, you know, well, I mean, I didn't start as a writer. You know, I was working. You know, I got a normal job. I had many jobs after I left school with zero qualifications. But I was in IT and telecoms, kind of sales and marketing for a few years. But writing was always a hobby. You know, it was always a hobby, but it wasn't something that I really did or thought that would be possible for me. And I think a bit of that comes from where I came from.
Definitely.
Type thing. But I tried to write a couple of novels that ran out of steam. And the first novel that I finished, which is called Coconut Badger, which is available from all good bookstores. That was a fictional account of a young guy growing up on a fictional housing scheme called the Monkford, which was based on South Nits Hill. And anybody who reads Coconut Badger, who knows South Nits Hill, always talks to me about the landmarks that are actually in the book, because it's clearly based on South Nits Hill. And it's not, you know, biographical. It's a fictional novel.
Of course,
But the protagonist was kind of loosely based on me being a young guy growing up in a housing scheme who didn't like fighting.
Aye.
And I, growing up in that environment, quickly discovered that, well, you're going to have to either find a way of getting your head round it, or some kind of strategy, because violence was everywhere.
No, it was rife. I mean, obviously, I don't know what age you're on, Mark, but just like kind of, if I go like that generation that I was in prison, there was certainly a lot of guys doing life sentences from Pollock, Nits Hill.
I was surrounded by it.
There was a very well organised crime group out there that were operating, and probably one of Scotland's biggest organised crime. I think there was a lot of that going about in that area. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I grew up in an environment where violence was a day-to-day thing, and the way that I dealt with it, as somebody who, for whatever reason, just grew up not liking it. The way I dealt with it was, I was always the joker, the comedian. I always made an effort to be fun and entertaining to be around, and as a result, basically the best fighters were my pals, and by extension, that meant that
you were safe.
I was kind of safe, because there was gang fighting and stuff going on, and I would be in amongst it, doing my best to navigate it in such a way that I didn't get stabbed or beat up type thing. But it's interesting because when I was 17, I was looking to earn a bit of extra cash, and a friend of mine had a friend who owned a nightclub, and they were looking for bar staff, I was told. So I went to speak to him. He wasn't there. I spoke to his manager. Turns out there was no vacancies for bar staff, but they were looking for door staff.
Aye.
And I was like, and he's like, well, why don't you give it a try and see how you get on? And also, it pays double. It pays double what the bar staff earn. So I did it, and I ended up doing it for 10 years. And I ended up being very good at it.
Aye.
And one of the things that I was particularly good at was basically, for example, see if there was guys needing to get knocked back. I was able to do it in such a way that they didn't take offence.
Aye.
And I was polite.
Aye.
And I wouldn't be like, growling at people.
There's nothing worse when you used to go in and you used to get a bouncer. They used to hate that. Like there was, so that's a skill, a very good skill.
So I spent 10 years working in a nightclub. Aye. Somebody who doesn't like violence, finding themselves in that job for 10 years. And obviously, you just need to deal with it. I had to fight, because sometimes you're just in that situation, and it's not you can't avoid it. But I certainly never, unlike some people I worked with who it was like sport, I certainly never enjoyed it. And I did my best to avoid it, and it's probably one of the reasons why I was one of the first names that was on the rota. Because if you own a nightclub, you don't want guys causing problems.
No, and you don't want the police constantly there either. But
exactly. So I did that job for a number of years, and then writing Coconut Badger was basically, when you read Coconut Badger, you've got this main character, Tam, who's grown up in this fictional housing scheme, and he's doing his best to kind of avoid confrontation, and he's befriended by the local hard man. Now, obviously, every scheme has at least one, most have multiple hard men type characters. So Pat is this fictional hard man, who basically, he wasn't based on one person. It was just like every psychopath that I met in my life, I put into this one character, Pat. And Pat takes Tam under his wing, and he basically says to him, okay, I can fix this issue that you've got with violence and confrontation. I've got some techniques and strategies, you don't need to be born with it. It's something that can be taught. So Pat, takes Tam to psychopath boot camp,
Aye.
you know, and the story and the carnage, as you can imagine, unfolds in the book. It's interesting. I know that you had David Heyman on. When I wrote that book, David Heyman was always in my head. When I was writing Pat. He was always the guy.
You can't beat Davey for a bad guy, can you?
Well, you remember Sense of Freedom? Was it Sense of Freedom? He played Jimmy Boyle. And he was
brilliant.
always in my head. And then, tangent, you know, I ended up writing, directing, producing. I did a master's degree at Cali Uni. I know you know Chris Dolan.
Chris,
you've had him on.
guy.
He was one of my lecturers. Shout out Chris. And I ended up, after that master's, going to LA. And I spent 3 months in West Hollywood. And there was a production company who read Coconut Badger, and they were like, we want to make it. So they took out an option. I wrote the script, and I met David Heyman for a beer in his local pub in Great Western Road. Because I said to him, you know, like, when I wrote the novel, it was you.
You were in
and now this company want to make it. And I've written the screenplay, and I sent him the script, and he was up for it, but unfortunately the money, the money didn't materialise, and it never happened. So hopefully, you know, someday,
still in the pipeline.
I mean, the novel's there, the script's there, David's there, I'm here. So hopefully, you know, someday in the future that may happen.
No, it's obviously I love David. David's been great with me, and he's coming back on soon. We're doing a kind of, I'm going to try out a kind of panel, like kind of with some kind of big characters. So I'm really looking forward to that. David's going to be part of that. So obviously you've managed to kind of navigate yourself through a kind of housing scheme, and a lot of people don't, because a lot of people date, especially when alcohol's involved in their household and stuff. How did you navigate away from the kind of, or did you get involved in the drugs and the drink scene? Well,
I had a cocaine and cannabis addiction from the age of 17 to the age of 27. You know, that 10-year period when I was working on the doors, and, you know, it was a real...
It goes hand in hand a lot.
It was a party, it was party central, you know. It was a party scene, you know, every weekend. It was just, you know, the partying was the focus, you know. And some of the guys I worked with on the door were involved in quite, you know, serious criminality. And they became my pals. And I was never really that interested in crime or, you know, that type of thing. I was always just motivated by having a good time and partying, and, you know, these guys were my pals. But I was up and down between Glasgow and London, for example, on trips, the purpose of which was organised crime. So I would go to London with a guy to meet a guy, and we would spend the weekend in there. They would, you know, I would not be in the room. They would do what they did, and then we would party for the weekend. So I was involved in organised crime during that period because they were my pals. But I was not involved in any criminality.
So you're just kind of on. I know exactly where you've been. I know, because you when you grow up in housing schemes the way we did, and where you grew up, I can't even. Is a lot worse where I grew up. I mean, I grew up in kind of Cumbernauld, but you've still got your exact same thing on a smaller scale. And then some people did. There was like loads of people that I know did go, and I've still got loads of pals who went down that road and are in prison and stuff like that. And I would never ever call them my pals, and it's a lifestyle they've chosen. I don't agree with some of the values and stuff like that, but they're great people, do you know what I mean? And this is the thing that I think people need to realise is there's always a reason why people are involved or why people are doing what they're doing, do you know what I mean? And sometimes when you grow up in these places, you've been very lucky, Mark, to navigate it in such a way that you've come out the other side, and now you're going on to teach people how not to be like that, do you know what I mean? And which is a testament to yourself. So obviously we're going to go into a programme and stuff a bit later, but how did you get involved in
writing and stuff then? How did that come about? How did that come about?
So it was a hobby. You know, it was always a hobby. Short stories, you know, just wee bits here and there. But I never really, you know, as a teenager and in my 20s, I never saw it as being something that was available to scheme boys.
Aye.
You know, and it was never something that I considered to be a serious proposition for me. Now, obviously, you've got different mediums. You've got novels, you've got television and film, you've got theatre. Now, through my IT and telecoms and a relationship I was in at the time, I ended up in London. I was living in London, and writing was a hobby. And I had a day job, and I was engaged. You know, the overheads were a fortune.
No, I know.
So it never felt like a possibility. But as is often the way, just stuff, life, you know, doors, synchronicity, sliding doors, whatever, you know. Me and my fiance at the time split up. She was the reason I was in London, and I knew immediately that that was an opportunity for me to make a fresh start. You know, start over, blank page, reinvent myself, do something completely different. I think I must have been, you know, late 20s, and the novel that I was working on at the time, I was like, okay. You know, I tried a couple of novels that ran out of steam. This is number 3, Coconut Badger. I'm gonna finish this novel, and I'm going to become a full-time professional writer, which is what happened.
And how did you go for? Did you go to, like, did you send your book to different places, and somebody obviously came back with?
Yeah, you know what? When I wrote, looking back on it, I wrote a manuscript and I started sending it out, and I was like, okay, so, you know, how long is it going to take before I get signed by an agent, picked up by a publisher, and win the Booker Prize? You know, and then you start to realise that, you know, rejection letter after rejection letter, and most people in that line of work, actors also, when it comes to auditions and stuff like that, basically, the vast majority of us go through this period of just bang, 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 rejection.
I think you need to go through it to succeed, don't you? I mean, I don't unless your dad's a Hollywood actor or whatever, or something like that, do you know what I mean, or a Hollywood producer, I think you need to go through that. Yeah. Because anybody that I've ever met who you think of as maybe like a big ego or somebody that's famous or whatever, they all talk about that period. They all talk about a period of knocking down doors, and most people give up, Mark. Most
people do, and I think, you know, it's a rite of passage, and I think it's looking back on it. For me, one of the best things about it is what it does is it gives you the time to develop your relationship with your craft. Because see, if you're in this for fame and money, you're fucked, right? So that period of rejection gives, I can only speak for myself, it gave me the time to basically just be with the work and be like, okay, so see if nothing happens, like see if I don't get, you know, signed, nothing gets published, nothing gets produced, and it's just me and the work. Is that okay?
Aye.
And it's you see, how you measure success is something that's probably different for each of us. But over the years, through so much rejection, I can only speak for myself, and I had to work on it, and I had to basically get to a place where my measurement of success is starting something finishing it and being proud to put my name on it at the end of it.
Definitely.
And see the rest of it, whatever. So see if you
it
take
comes.
Coconut Badger as an example. I mean, I wrote that, I don't know, 20 years ago, something, you know, long time ago. It was the first thing that I wrote. I'm very proud of it to this day.
Aye.
Don't get me wrong, if I was to go back and change, but you can't, because it's
No,
out.
of course.
So I'm very proud of that piece of work. And then since then, every novel, every stage play, every film, every project that I've been involved in, the measure, it can't be my profile or fame or anything like that. Or
No.
it can't be money. It's got to be about my relationship with that project, and am I proud to put my name on it? And I can honestly say, looking back on it, every single thing that I've been involved in, I'm proud of my involvement. And it's not, that's the other thing, especially when it comes to film and theatre. There's so many people involved, you know? When you look at all the different people that are involved, it's not just me. It's not just my name that's on there.
I know.
Each project is like a mini company where you've got all these different people that are involved.
Well, when I was researching you just even last night, it was like there was you've done a lot of stuff, loads of stuff, but a lot of the stuff, it was, I couldn't really put my finger on, is that Mark's? Because there was, as you say, and I don't know if that's because the way you do it or whatever, but there was always people running about you doing, like, mentioning it when you're in Google, just like Mark and so-and-so, Mark and so-and-so, you know, it was always kind of with people, and you've done a hell of a lot, you know, you've done a lot of stuff. What would you say is your passion then, if you were to choose, like film, writing?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, so for example, when I wrote Coconut Badger, I've always been a reader, or I used to be a reader of fiction. When I was writing Coconut Badger, I decided, like, I was going to read, there's something called, I think it's called the Modern Library, and it's the top 100 novels of the 20th century. And I decided I was going to read them, or try, and I decided I was going to start at number 100 and work back the way. And I think I got to number 50 or something. I read like 50 of them while I was writing Coconut Badger, but it's it's your George Orwell's, and you know, it's the heavy hitters, you know. I loved reading novels. I loved writing that novel. But my first love, and as a consumer of fiction, was television and film. And I always knew that I wanted to write for television and film, because you hear so many screenwriters talking about, especially if they've had challenging childhoods, the TV was your only friend. In some cases. So
to become part of that is a big thing, where you became part of something that maybe was your, in a way, your saviour.
Yeah,
as a child,
exactly. As a child, looking back on it, like, I had a very early relationship with television and film, and I was very passionate about television and film growing up. So I suppose, if I'm being honest, I was also a reader, and my decision to start with a novel was a test. I wanted
so how do you go to film, but how do you move? Like, obviously,
so basically what happened was, I wanted to go to television and film first, but I wanted to test myself. And I can only speak for myself, but in my mind, to write a novel was something that I thought would be a bigger test than to write a screenplay. Now, obviously, I didn't know back then that it's as hard to write a screenplay as it is to write a novel, but I didn't know that then. So I wrote the novel, and it was like, okay, what's next? So what's next is television and film. But I'd been speaking to people, you know, other writers and stuff, and I had this understanding that quite a lot of screenwriters use theatre as a backdoor. Either intentionally or unintentionally, a lot of screenwriters come from theatre. Now, going back to our conversation about Priesthill and Pollock, right? When I grew up, I'd never been to the theatre. None of my family, none of my friends, none of my neighbours, nobody in G53 then or now, but it's complicated, went to the theatre. So how am I going to write a stage play?
I know.
How am I going to use theatre as a backdoor into television and film if I have no relationship with the theatre? So, similar to when I was writing Coconut Badger, I decided, well, what I'll do is, back then all I was doing was reading quality literature. So now I'm basically just going to start going to the theatre. So for the first time in my life, I started to go to theatre. And what happened was I fell in love. I fell in love with the medium of theatre. It changed my life. I was blown away by the medium of theatre. I would go to everything that I could see. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a crier, but there was times when I would be moved to tears by productions. You talk about people like David Heyman. I mean, obviously, David Heyman is probably most known as a screen actor, but he's one of Scotland's finest stage actors. So seeing people like David Heyman on stage, now Scotland, if there was a I don't want to talk about the Euros because it's going to depress us, right? But so let's talk about the World Cup, right? If there was a World Cup, right, for theatre, Scotland would get out the group stages every time. Because as a small nation, when it comes to the actors, the playwrights, the directors, and all the other roles and jobs that go on within that world, we punch way above our weight. So I was very lucky in the sense that I got to see so much quality. Because if you look at the Tron, the Sits, the Tramway, the National Theatre of Scotland, Play Pie Pint, you know, there's so much quality theatre in Scotland.
What do you think that, like, obviously, growing up, I never went to the theatre, right? There was cinema and stuff like that I went to, if anything. Why do you think that this is only me again, this might be my opinion, but even, why is theatre maybe seen as a kind of middle class and not a working class thing then?
Well, obviously, I mean, again, David Heyman has got that relationship with Wildcat and 784, companies who were politically motivated in their desire to make theatre accessible to the working classes, and people like John McGrath and David McClellan. You know, these people were passionate about that. Now, if you look at the relationship between theatre and public funding, obviously public funding theatre is a relatively new phenomena, because if you go back to Shakespeare, etc., there was no public funding. So Shakespeare, ironically, was for his audience was the working classes. You know,
was it?
Yeah, Shakespeare's audience. In fact, the theatre audience up until public funding was the working classes, because there was no tax. You know, there was no tax subsidy. But then when tax subsidy came along, and the taxpayer started to subsidise, not all theatre, but some theatre. You know, there is some theatre in Scotland that is not subsidised by the taxpayer. But the theatre that is subsidised by the taxpayer.
So you must love like the Edinburgh Fringe and that then, eh? Like just going up and seeing all the kind of...
Well, I mean, I've had, you know, I've taken productions to the festival. The festival is, you know, I mean,
it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, the festival, it's the biggest arts festival in the world. You know, the population of Edinburgh goes from, what, 300,000 or 400,000 to 1.5 million during the month of August. You've got maybe, I don't know, 2,000-3,000 productions coming from all over the world. I mean, arguably, the only thing Scottish about the Edinburgh Festival is the fact that it's in Edinburgh, because it's such an international festival. But so that's like a bubble. You know, that's not Scottish theatre.
No.
When it comes to theatre being produced, tax subsidised theatre being produced in Scotland currently, and has never catered for the working classes. Now, why that is the case is very complex, and I'm not blaming, you know, Scottish theatre, because Scottish theatre's full of people who want to include people from the working classes. But the reality of the situation is that, you know, if you give me 100 tickets, for the next National Theatre of Scotland production, and you asked me to go into G53 and go door to door, giving them away, I can't give them away. They don't want to go.
Strange, isn't it? Because, I mean, it's... When you do speak, like, obviously Davey's been on here before and he spoke about his acting career going through, and with like, other people that are involved in that kind of, even Chris and stuff, and there's loads of people that you speak to, and even Kira as well, and they talk about theatre being something that's so different for film, but and it's some people's passion, it's other people hate it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but the thing is, it's a lot of working class people that do it, isn't it? It's a lot of working class people that take part in the actual acting.
Well, and each of them has got their own history, their own family, their own, journey.
Aye.
I was angry, and I still am a bit angry
Aye.
about the fact that I grew up in a place where theatre was not part of our lives, despite the fact our taxis were paying for it. And that's still the case. The people of G53, their taxis pay for the National Theatre of Scotland. It pays for, the producing venues and companies. But in the audience is the middle class and people who work in the industry and acting students.
I know,
And it's not fair.
No, that isn't fair.
And I was angry when I wrote my first stage play, and I'm still angry. And I've tried over the years to have conversations with government, Creative Scotland, National Theatre of Scotland, and they're all in agreement that it's unacceptable. Nobody's denying it.
Aye.
Nobody's saying it's not the case. But what's going to be done about it? And to be honest with you, I came up with a pilot project which I pitched to Creative Scotland and government, and they were up for it. The idea was, if your postcode is between number 1 and number 999 on the SIMD, then your ticket's £5 for any tax subsidised production. And it's quite a complicated process, but I put a lot of time and effort into ideas round about, okay, well, it's not just about offering the subsidy, it's also about trying to incentivise and encourage
I suppose it's stigmatised by the working class as well, in a way. Like, if I was like 18, 19 and I said to a group of my pals, I'm going to theatre tonight, I think it's slagged for it. Like, just not in a funny way, but like, they'd be like, I got to theatre, not who drink and all that.
Yeah.
So I suppose the working class, we maybe need to look
but
at...
it depends what type of theatre you're talking about. So, for example, if you were to say to your pals, do you want to go and see up at the Pavilion, I'm not a Billy, he's a Tim?
Aye, right.
That'd be okay.
Aye, right.
But do you want to go and see, I don't know, King Lear, whatever, some sort of heavyweight intellectual piece of theatre, the piss would be getting taken at you.
And you probably would you feel, if I went dressed like this and walked into some of these theatres, would I feel out of place? Would you feel like out of place, or?
Well, that'd be up to you, wouldn't it?
Listen, you couldn't give me a redneck that way, do you know what I mean? But I'm just meaning, could people feel out of place that way?
100%. You could add it. I mean, like, I did, but I was militant.
Aye.
I was like, listen, I don't know what you guys think you're playing at, but the game's up, I'm here, and I'm here to see it, and nobody's going to stop me. I used to go on my own, and I'd basically just be like, I don't care. I don't care what I'm wearing, I don't care if I'm on my own. Theatre doesn't belong to you, it belongs to everybody. And this theatre, tax subsidised, is intentionally or unintentionally elitist. And in Scotland, when it comes to tax subsidised theatre, we have what I would describe as a cultural apartheid, where basically intentionally, in fact, you know what, it's not intentional. It's complex, But the reality of the situation is that there is a disconnect
Aye.
between, and I keep using G53 just because that's where I'm from, right? But G53 and the theatre, there's no relationship between, unless it's I'm no a Billy.
G67 and the eye,
Unless it's Des
something
Dillon.
like that. Or my ma going to watch
Anything to do with Rangers or Celtic.
Joseph and the Technicolor Doomcoat or something.
Yeah,
my ma going to the pavilion to watch that.
Or by the way, I mean, Ambassador Theatre Group.
Aye.
Like the King's Theatre, Theatre Royal, they'll put on musicals and various other things, which is obviously a different genre.
I've went to a few. I went to one, the Queen one, We Will Rock You. It was really, really good.
And by the way, see the thing I've noticed over the years about theatre, like see if me and you go to the pictures, and we're going to see a film, right? And we come outside and you're like, see that film? That's not my cup of tea, and here's the reasons why, right? Whereas, see if me and you go to the theatre, right, and we leave, you might say to me, I don't like the theatre, rather than that specific production. I don't like that specific play for these reasons. You're like, see, I knew
that wasn't for me.
I'm not in the theatre. I don't even know why I wasted my time going. So people will go to the theatre, not like it, and basically say, I don't like the theatre. But people will go to the cinema, not like it, and be like, I don't like that film. But they'll go back to the cinema.
I know.
But that's cultural. That's because...
It's the same with orchestra and that as well. I mean, my partner went to see Game of Thrones. It was the orchestra. It was, I can't remember if is it Rajan Jawai or something.
Right.
It was whoever done all the music for Game of Thrones. And she says it's the best thing she's ever been to. She says it's the best thing she's ever been to, and if it ever came again, she would pay whatever it was to I was in prison at the time, to take me to it. She says it was absolutely phenomenal. But she doesn't go. She wouldn't go to the orchestra again.
Why not?
Well, she maybe would if I but I'm just like, so I suppose it is again. It's a cultural thing, and it's because she loved Game of Thrones that she went to see that. So it was the production. I suppose, do we get told enough about theatre? I
think it's where we're from. So I'll give you an example. I've always liked classical music, right? But I never went to any, orchestras or anything like that. And when I was doing my masters at Cali, I discovered that, see, your student card basically got you a £5 ticket for any Royal Scottish National Orchestra, the RSNO.
Aye.
So any RSNO performance at the Royal Concert Hall, if you had a student card, you got it for £5. So one of my favourite pieces of classical music is Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, which ironically comes from film, because one of my favourite films is Shine.
Aye.
Have you seen Shine? It's the story of the Australian pianist.
No.
David Hepkoff, I think his name is. You should watch it.
Send me a message.
Yeah.
Aye.
So that's one of my favourite films. The Rack 3 is... I was introduced to the Rack 3 through that film. So it was like my introduction to classical music was through film. But that gave me an interest in classical music. There was a pianist at the Royal Concert Hall called Nikolai Lugansky, Russian pianist, performing Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto live.
Amazing.
While I was doing my masters. And so I got a £5 ticket, which I think probably cost about 60 or 70 quid, because the RSNO at that time clearly were trying to get young people. Now, I was a mature student, so obviously they weren't aiming it at me, but they were trying to get young people in because their audience was older. So they offered £5 tickets. So that's where my idea for the £5 kind of tax subsidised theatre came from. But the point I'm making is in relation to expanding your horizons. See, schemes, like, see, growing up, there was intellectuals within the ranks, so you had different people. You had people who might have a job, might not have a job, but they were reading like Tolstoy and, they were just heavy intellectual.
New stuff about politics and all that. I know what you mean.
Dostoevsky and stuff like that, but it was like, there was people like that around, but they were very much in the minority. And I think that when you come from where we come from.
It's about self-esteem. It's your self-esteem's eroded in these places, and it's the same. We're going to talk about prison soon, and we'll talk about the programme that you're delivering, Matt. But it's your self-esteem's eroded. You're taught at the school probably. That's not where you go.
I don't know what it is. And you know what? I think, see, at the end of the day, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but see if you're growing up in an environment where you might not have dinner.
Aye.
Like, at the end of the day,
I know.
my next meal is my priority.
Aye.
Right? So, see, when you're growing up in an environment potentially where there's neglect or chaos or alcohol or violence or whatever it is, the irony is that in that type of space, you need the arts more than anybody.
Aye.
But there's less space for it.
I know.
Because you've got bigger fish to fry. You know,
Totally.
At the end of the day, you've got bigger priorities. If you're living in that type of environment, the time that you need access to the arts and creativity more is probably the time when you think of it the least. And
Right.
I think that's probably one of the reasons why, because clearly societal issues round about, the gap between the people that have and the people that don't, and the rise of food banks and poverty and cost of living and all the stuff that goes with poverty around about addictions and violence, etc. Some of these people that we're talking about, we're like, why are they not going to the theatre and why are they not going to the RSNO? It's because they're hanging on by the fucking fingertips.
No, 1,000,000%, and I think we teach. I've spoke to loads of different people since I've done this podcast, and loads of different views. But the view that does seem to come back all the time, and it's everybody's of the same view, is cost of living rises, poverty rises, crime rises, and then crime rises, addiction rises, drug death rises. It's a huge complex issue, and we're not trying to get away from that, but trying to fix over it and plaster stats and do whatever you're doing to try and make it look better. And the people are kind of at the stage now where they don't even care. They just want something done. They don't care. Like, I think the government could come out and go, look, do you know what? Prison system or whatever system you want to talk about, we've got it wrong. We're going to try and add a guy on here called Chris Daw, a big KC for England, and an absolutely fabulous conversation had with him. And I asked him, I said, what would you do, Chris? What would you do with the current legal system? And he said, truthfully, Sean, I says, aye. He says, I would rip it up and start again. He says, it's that bad. I say, it's creating more crime. It's creating like poverty. It's madness. And in this day and age, as you're talking about that gap of elitism or whatever you want to call it, is so big. Like, I seen a thing the other day where it said, like, Elon Musk could spend £1 million every day, and for him to spend these, whatever, it would need to be 500-odd-year-olds spending £1 million a day, while there's children in war-torn countries getting blown up and stuff like that, and then there's children in our own country going to food banks and stuff like that, children down in England, food banks and stuff like that, appearing and stuff like that. So there's a massive energy stuff, and as you say, these things are going to corrupt your vision for any thought of going to, especially when you've got that wee box in your house that you can just switch on and watch what they're feeding you. I suppose when you go to theatre, you're probably opened up to a lot of stuff that's no, maybe conditions are the wrong word, but no, it's not been touched by them. It's raw. It's probably a lot better to watch than them feeding a narrative of what's happening to society now. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's two different relationships. If you're sitting in your living room watching TV, fiction, like a film or something like that, or you go to the theatre, one of them is reactive and one of them is proactive. So you're sitting in your living room reacting, whereas if you get up, get a bus or drive or walk to the theatre and sit in that space, which is communal, because you're surrounded by community, and you consume something live, it requires you to be proactive in a completely different way to the way that you consume television and film. So it's a completely different. It's a completely different experience.
It's wildly different, and I know people would probably argue with that if they're entitled to that. But they're wildly different. Wildly different.
But the sad thing is that most people who would make the case haven't been.
Aye.
You know. So my argument would be go, and make your own mind up.
There's a special energy in the theatre. I went to see Lion King as well. That was another one I went to see. And obviously these are big kind of probably productions that the working class have went to see. But I did go and see Lion King, and there's an energy within the theatre that you're not going to get sitting in the living room. Do you know what I mean? And that energy, I always say, like where your focus goes, your energy flows. Do you know what I mean? If you're focusing on that if you're focusing on that that performance, you're going to feel that energy. Do you know what I mean? And you're going to become part of that energy.
It's a very special environment to be in, and it's completely different from television and film.
And is this what you're bringing into prisons then?
So I mean, it goes back to it's all of it's kind of interconnected. Like see all these things we're talking about in relation to the political things and addictions and violence and poverty, etc. I mean, I'm no anything special, right? But what I am is somebody who this program that I have developed, it feels like it's a culmination of everything. See all the different elements that go together to build me has put me in a situation where I've got this to offer. So my lived experience of addiction and the justice system, my professional development when it comes to writing, directing, producing, and my interest in spirituality and self-awareness has put me in a situation where basically I've developed a program which is available to anybody.
So obviously we're talking about prison setting, but this is for anybody, this program, eh?
Right, so the program currently runs in prisons, residential rehabs, community rehabs, and community sentence groups. And the focus, it's almost split 50-50 between justice and recovery. The focus of the program is having a positive impact on alcohol, drug death rates and offending and reoffending rates. And that's the focus, right? But actually, the program that we can drill into what the program is, but actually what it's about is the relationship with self.
Raising your vibration to a kind of level where you love yourself again. That kind of...
Yeah, so see Mark's relationship with Mark, Sean's relationship with Sean.
Interconnectedness is a massive disconnect, if that makes sense.
That's the focus. The focus is, so the nature of the work that's done, it's a self-awareness. It's not a drama program. I mean, we use creative writing and character development and script development as a tool, but it's not our focus.
No.
We're not going in as a drama group. I've got no interest in being part of a drama group. Not that I'm knocking them, they're great, right? But the program is not a drama program. I describe it as being, it's like drama therapy for people who usually don't have any interest in drama. Most of our groups, like I say, are either in the justice space or in the recovery space. And when participants come into these groups, our delivery teams are basically going to be introducing them to some concepts which we hope they will take away with them out of the session. So the session usually lasts for 2 hours. So we're going to do some stuff in this 2 hour session, but we want you to leave the session with some tools and some techniques that you can use in your own time in order for you to develop a better relationship with and a greater understanding of self. Because like we were talking about earlier, like see the chat that's going on inside both of our heads 24/7. Most people, 99.9% of the population, think of that as their thoughts. But it's not your thoughts. There's all sorts of shit going on inside each of our heads. Various entities, sub-personalities, belief systems, ego, critique, etc. And all of this chat usually is critical and negative.
Aye, I agree.
So all of this chat that's going on. So what we're doing in our program is we're basically through character development, the protagonist, the critic, constant source of negativity and disruption, the mentor, constant source of love and compassion. We're basically giving participants the opportunity to practice, to identify the various chat that is going on inside their heads in order to identify the critic.
Essentially labelling.
Yeah.
Like labelling their own critic, their own mentor.
Yeah, so we want
protagonist.
them to be able to, through self-awareness, be able to catch the chat and say, hang on a minute.
That's a critic.
Catch, okay, is that negative? Is that positive? So we want them to be able to identify the inner chat, but we also want them to be able to develop a relationship with their own inner mentor.
No, I think that sounds really, really interesting, actually, really interesting, and it touches on a lot of the kind of stuff that I would talk about, like some of the people that I really respect, like Gabor Mate and Sadhguru and these people that we speak about often on here. I think it's stuff that you're trying to, the challenge always is trying to raise the vibration in a place that's got such a low vibration foundation, if that makes sense. You walk into a prison system now, and that's, as we were speaking before earlier, that prison system is only one. You walk into these G6, 7, G5, that usually the vibration setting in there is low as well. So you're taking this to people and just showing them essentially what your best reads of self-empowering books, Power It Now, Chimp Paradox, The Secret, maybe even touching on the law of attraction, how you attract different things, how your thoughts. Am I picking that up right? Is that kind of...
Yeah, all of those books and teachings that you've described are in there. The only thing that I'm doing different is I'm bringing my kind of...
unique.
My writing...
Aye.
background in such a way that I'm identifying three. So every group has three central characters. They have multiple secondary characters, but they build three primary characters: the protagonist, the critic, the mentor. And the group and the delivery team build these three characters from scratch over a 12 to 16 week period. As they do so, monologues and sketches and spoken words start to emerge. And then week 12 to 16, there is a live event for friends, family, support staff, where it's not compulsory because we're not a drama group, but volunteer participants will read sections of the script for friends and family.
And I obviously I've been to these things myself, like obviously when you've completed groups and stuff like that, with David Heyman's group Shooters, which was an amazing project as well. Very powerful when you see these things, and you, as we spoke about,
Beyond
you even
powerful.
says some reconciliation.
Yeah, because a lot, in the justice and recovery space, a lot of our participants have got fractured and in some cases estranged relationships with friends and family. It's actually quite a common occurrence at these events for participants and friends and family to be reconciled which is obviously a very powerful thing, which goes to my lived experience because, so my brother died of a heroin overdose. He's a big, he's obviously a big part of the reason why I do what I do, because I tried to help him and I was unable to do so. So if I can help others in a way that I wasn't able to help Jason, then that makes everything worthwhile. And you look at this work has become a focus and obsession for me. I started this journey 8 years ago, back in 2016. I didn't even know this existed. See, the idea of this type of work taking place in a recovery or justice context, I didn't even know it existed. And it was actually an actor, Adam Robertson, who invited me into Shots as a playwright with Neil Leaper. So basically, for the charity that I'm now working with, Creative Change Collective, which was called Street Cones at the time, and they invited me in. So it was basically 3 of us working with 10 inmates and Shots, all serving life sentences. And week 1, we started with a blank page, and with our support, they created a piece of theatre over that kind of 12 to 16 week period that they went on, some of them went on to perform for their friends, family and support staff. So that was my introduction to the work, and I was just blown away by it. I was like, wow, powerful. So I'm writing, directing, producing stage plays, but it's nothing like this. It's still it's theatre, but it's a different thing, because the therapeutic intention here feels different. So I started this journey of, what is this? And I started to study drama therapy and psychodrama, and look at the difference between kind of drama groups and community arts type groups, where they go in with the arts and a drama focus, which has a therapeutic benefit. I started to look at, well, what if we actually change it? We go in with the therapeutic focus, but we use the arts and creativity as a tool, as a vehicle, but it's not our primary driver, because most of these individuals, if they sniff drama group off you, they'll run a mile.
Oh, definitely, and obviously being part of that, when we done Shooters with Davey Heyman and stuff, it was one of the groups where it was one of the best projects I'd ever done. But again, I'll go to this and we can maybe speak about this, Mark, but you're only hitting a very small...
Yeah,
small,
100%. So see, for me, the next thing that I'm asking the prison service to support me with is to open. I'm working on a workbook, which is going to open the group program up to individuals. So if we take Shots as an example, there's 800 inmates in Shots. So I want 800 workbooks to go in there, and I want 800 individuals to be given the opportunity to go through this program. Because the average group has got between 10 and 20 participants. That's clearly, I'm not reaching enough people.
I know.
But if I can get the workbook out to individuals, then obviously I can reach more people, and that's what I want to do. But I'm the first patient. I need to work on myself, right? I'm not coming here today or talking to people in the justice or recovery space saying that I'm anything special. I've got the answers, they're broke, and I can help fix them. That's bullshit. Because the stuff in the programme I'm working on, like you're
constantly working on it.
I'm working on my own stuff. So see the chat, it's in my head. I've got the chat going on in my head 24/7, constantly telling me, the conversation going on, telling me about my relationship with that, what that means, what I like, what I don't like, etc. And ultimately, if you take addiction as an example, it's a conversation going on inside your head. Like your relationship with addiction is basically a conversation going on inside your head, telling you what to think and what not to think. So the whole kind of self-awareness journey is what it's all about. And the work...
It's huge. Honestly, the potential of it is huge if we speak very, very honestly. Like and it's people from the jail. When people come in, anybody that's got kind of experience, we all talk about that need for the awareness to be pushed up, and it's what you like. That is, and it's I think to me it sounds amazing. The things that I think you could come up against, right, is obviously staff, right, and this is where I get. I would even roll the book out to staff members.
Well, no, yeah. See, when it comes to the book. So, for example, I'm beta testing the workbook. So anybody who's watching this, who wants to be part of that beta test and wants to have access to the workbook, can do so by reaching out via any social media channel they're watching on.
What is your social media?
So, I mean, markmacnicol.com, you'll find all the social medias for me and Creative Change and anybody else that I'm working with, because like this work is the type of work that can have a positive impact on all of us, not just the people
it's got bags of
who are
potential.
clearly, see, because of Jason, and because of my lived experience. I mean, I used to visit Jason. I visited Jason in most prisons, and because of his heroin addiction, I've focused in on the recovery space and the justice space for the programme, to the extent that, I mean, I directed a feature film fairly recently, but most of my kind of theatre and television film type work has been put on the back burner while I focus on this programme, you know.
You need to get it 100%, Mark, you know that.
What I want is basically...
But you need support for the system. You need support for them.
It's not going to happen, mate. See, when it comes to... there's no funding, you know. So, as you know, the prison service is heavily stretched in terms of the resources that they have at their disposal. So if you're looking to get a programme into a prison, you need to find your funding from somewhere else. So funding is an area that we need support. In fact, I put a video out a couple of days ago asking for volunteers to help, because the programme has some project funding, but no core funding, no salaries, no back office funding. So
I know you need the stuff you need, and obviously I'm nowhere near as kind of colour. I don't know, like is I don't even know how to put it, but is just as stabilised as you, or whatever you want to call it, like in the way that you're experienced, or I can't get the right word, but there's stuff that I've got that I'm looking to do, and I don't even know where to start for funding, right? I don't even know where to go, and this is my problem. Is going to be my next stage. Is going to go. How do I go? How do I look for funding? How do I start doing stuff like this? How do I start pushing it? Because I've got something kind of similar to yourself that I would like to push it as well, but yours is a way down the pipeline, and I think it sounds amazing. I really do. I think it sounds great, and I'm not always really. I'm not always like this kind of hopeful about programs and stuff, but the sounds what you're doing is this the stuff that changed my life, and the stuff that opened my eyes to prison was books like The Chimp Paradox, Celestine Prophecy, and the Power of Now, and just all these kind of ancient texts about the law of attraction and different things that, and then I experienced my own experiences, which gave me, and obviously I had a great support network. I'll never take that away. I had an amazing support network. Very lucky with the family that I had, my partner. But that was what opened my eyes, was that awareness level, and I started seeing how low my. By the way, I went back to the low level of awareness. Like, I had a good few weeks of a very high vibration that I was at, and I've ended up back on the low vibration. And I think it's due, if you can nail a prison, the prison's the hardest environment you'll ever get. As I don't care what anybody says,
it's a very unique environment.
Very unique, and it's very tough in the way that you're always going to, you could get one guy that comes in and goes like that in your hall. What a lot of fucking shite, bin that. And if that guy's got enough clout, and a lot of people listen to that. Do you know what I mean? This is where you need to deal with.
But if you've got a workbook in your cell that you can open in your own time, and he's not there.
Definitely. No, this is what I'm saying. I think it's an amazing project. I think it's something that should get rolled out, and I think if you somebody like Mick Stoney or something would be more than up for that.
Well, we're in Berlin.
Aye.
In fact, we've got, we support two groups in Berlin. We've got the drama therapy type group, and we've also got the media group. So Mick was very keen on the idea of inmates being able to produce their own film and radio content. So we get some lottery funding.
Brilliant.
To put in.
I'm a big fan of Mick, honestly, and I know I give the prison system a hard time on here. Do you know what I mean? And I always will. Do you know what I mean? Because I believe it is broken, but I think people like Mick and stuff like that. I'm half looking forward to HMP Glasgow opening. I just hope it doesn't end up like a low moss.
Well, I went to a meeting. Mick Stoney invited Creative Change, Vox Liminis, and some other kind of third sector creative charities in to talk about the architect plans and to talk about where the theatre space is going to be, and almost like a consultation to get some feedback on ideas and suggestions and ways in which he can accommodate the security side of things, but also open it up to the local community and things. So he's a very forward-thinking and innovative individual. In fact, I'm doing a podcast tomorrow in Berlin. I'm actually going into Berlin and being interviewed by that group who we got some lottery funding for.
Aye.
And my understanding is that obviously it's being created for internal television and radio distribution within Berlin and possibly some other prisons. But my understanding is that content is going to be going external. Now, I don't know of any other prison in the UK that's creating, the inmates are creating podcasts that are going out externally.
No.
So I'm going to speak to staff tomorrow when I go in, because I think that getting people like yourself in there as guests for the podcast, and anybody who's interested in going into Berlin as a guest on, what's the group called? Barbed Wireless Media. The Barbed Wireless Media group.
Definitely big.
Basically, I'll put a shout out.
5-0 definitely done that.
See if you get me, if you get me on my socials, anybody, who's interested in going in as a guest, I'll pass it on to, we've got a delivery team member who's in there working with that group.
I'll certainly put it on if you send me something over as well, I'll put it on. I mean, I've not got a massive, I've only been at social media for 8 months, but my platform's no bad. I can, and especially for this type of stuff, if you send me something over, I'm more than happy to put that across my socials as well, because I think that's a great idea, and it gives the boys a wee bit of hope that there is stuff I mean, the amount of people that have wrote to me and said, "Oh, Sean, I think you're doing what's great," and before I started it, you really do question yourself and going, what am I doing here? Like, I'm out my depth here. And I've got a very, very solid support network, and my partners was always like, Sean, you can hold your own with the best of them. Like, I don't know why you doubt yourself. And I'm like, I know, but you do, you're in like...
Well, it's your critique. The voice inside your head.
Exactly.
We've all got the same voice.
Aye.
Like fucking Joe Rogan's got that voice.
I know.
Joe Rogan's got a voice inside his head when he's brushing his teeth in the morning, and it's saying to him, you're no all that, mate.
Aye.
You don't,
Definitely.
You think you're something special, but the reality is you're a bit shit,
Aye.
And obviously the trick is, I mean, I think half the battle is being able to identify that voice as a negative entity which does not have good intentions towards you. So, for example, we talk about the light room and the dark room. Now, every second of every day, you're either in the light room or you're in the dark room. And it's not really that difficult to work out which one you're in.
I know. The feelings tell you.
See, if you're in a space where anything negative or is going on, you're in the dark room. But what we're trying to teach people is that they have access to a mentor. So, for example, one of the exercises in our groups, we will ask Sean. Now, we do this in group with shared group characters, but we'll ask you in your own time. In fact, I will ask you to do this as an exercise. You may have done it already, maybe not, you can tell me. From your mentor to Sean, a love letter. Have you ever done anything like that?
Similar.
Right.
Similar, and I've got to the... I know what you mean, but it's
so basically, it's
perfect.
So see your mentor,
because it's very hard to do it. And even
your
if I was to
mentor
try
is your champion, your biggest fan, right? So basically, if I was to do it, right, then my mentor is going to send me write a letter. You can voice record it as well. In fact, arguably, voice recording is even better because you can frequently listen back to it. But the letter's going to be, you know what? You're doing great.
You're affirming into it.
You're doing great. Here's all the reasons why you should stop giving yourself a hard time. Because you're doing your best. You're not a bad guy. You know, you don't get up in the morning thinking, right, how am I going to fuck people over? You know, you're actually trying to help other people as well as get on with your own shit. But at the end of the day, so the Buddha's last words. Do you know what the Buddha's last words were?
I don't. I've read loads of stuff, but I don't know.
Right, so I mean, obviously, I wasn't there.
I know he transcended and whatever, and
so
when it was Nirvana. But
I mean, I take it nobody can prove this, but a lot of people believe that the Buddha's last words were, "We must each seek our own salvation diligently." You know,
that makes so much sense, and I think that what pops out to mind to me, I do a similar test with people myself, and I say to them, imagine yourself 100-year-old, and like your nephew, you had a grandson or whatever comes up and says, "Grandad, tell me about life. What do I do? Put it write it down." So you write down exactly what you would say. So you would say, like, make sure your values are right. Make sure that you live life to the max. Don't let people influence you. That you don't let people's opinions bother you. Build up, so you would put out what you think. Essentially, what you've just wrote is you. That's you. That's your value system. It's your moral compass. And if you're not living by that, you're going to be in conflict. And most people aren't living like the way they would write or tell somebody else to live. Do you know what I mean? And then in Untethered Soul, Michael Singer also says, give that wee guy a voice in your head and ask, would you hang about with that person? And the answer probably would be no. I mean, I can't walk by a mirror these days be going, I fucking need to lose a bit of weight, man, terrible. And that straight away knocks off a negative.
Yeah, but that's not you.
Aye, that's it.
See that voice?
Aye.
Like, see you walking past a mirror and a voice says, look at the fucking state of you or whatever.
Aye.
You know what I mean? That is not Sean.
No.
And the work that we're doing is about giving people the opportunity to catch the voice, because they didn't used to catch the voice.
No, I'm excited about this. And I'm not excited about many prison projects.
Well, this isn't a prison project. I mean, at the end of the day,
from my point of view, my point of view,
and from my point of view, because we're both passionate about the justice space and the recovery space. But for me, I want this program mainstream. I want this program to be made available to a mainstream audience.
Should be.
Whilst my particular focus, because of my history, is clearly, you know, I'm very excited and interested and motivated by the recovery and justice space.
No, it should be.
I'd like it to have a mainstream audience.
I'm very interested to see how it works in the prison, but very interested.
Why don't you join a session?
See if I get time, I will. If I can get time, I spoke to you earlier, Mark. My life's hectic now, but see, I would love to. Honestly, I would love to.
Anytime you're free, let me know, and I'll sort it with the prison.
No, I would love to. Honestly, it would be something that.
Well, when I say sort it with the prison, I'll ask the prison, and then they'll say yes or no.
No, that's fine. No, we can definitely talk about that. I would definitely be something that I'd be up for, because I think I'm quite excited about it. I think there's a lot of people that if they were to get that wee tiny bit of awareness, it sets off that want for knowledge, that want for energy, that want for that positivity.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, everything starts with the relationship with self.
A 1,000,000%. I don't think that your relationship with yourself is everything. It's I always try and say to people as well, like, you can't help anybody else if your relationship with yourself's terrible. My relationship with myself is honestly not even anywhere near 50%, but I would want it to be. But I'm in a position where I know I'm confident when I talk, but my self-esteem is not as great as what people think. People think because I'm on a podcast, I talk on a podcast, oh, you're flying, mate, and you're doing this, your numbers are... I honestly, like, really, I'm just as hanging as anybody else. I'm stressed out. I believe in my work. I believe in what I say. I believe I'm passionate about change and stuff, especially prison reform, social injustice, stuff like that. But no, it's definitely, and as you say, you want this rolled out to the public, which I really think everybody should have a look at this, Mark. But for me personally, I'm very interested in how this works out in the prisons, because I think this is exactly what's needed, is that gaining that belief in themselves.
By the way, see, before I forget, can I also mention the reason why it's called anonymous drama? The anonymity element is important because, for example, from a safeguarding perspective, one of the reasons why it's so popular with prison stuff is because, see, if you're a participant and I'm the delivery team and you want to talk about mum's alcoholism, I'm going to stop you. And instead, we're going to work with this fictional group character's mum's alcoholism. So no personal details come in the session, which mean that during a session, nobody in the room knows the difference between what's lived experience and what's fiction. And that creates a very unique environment, because you know yourself that most recovery, justice, psychotherapy, group one-to-one type environments, there's an expectation that you're going to reveal your testimony. Even a fellowship meeting.
Nobody likes to bring down their own support network, especially when they know there's no bad in it. There's no bad in that support network, but it may have caused you some sort of trauma along the line, or may have caused you some sort of hurt. You wouldn't want that.
Well,
public.
we're just taking all.
So I think that's
we're
great
taking
as
it
well.
all off the table, and we're basically just saying in our groups, nobody will know the difference between what's lived experience and what's fiction. Everything we do with fictional characters. So it's that fictional character's mum's alcoholism. Now we can play about with it and explore it, etc. The analogy would be, if there's 10 participants and 2 delivery team, 12 people walk into a room and empty the contents of each of their suitcases in the middle of the room. I recognise my stuff, but I don't recognise anybody else's stuff. And that creates a very unique environment, which prison staff, residential rehab staff, etc., are appreciative of, because from a safeguarding perspective, we know that it makes the environment less emotionally charged and less triggering.
Definitely.
The possibility of somebody being triggered can never be completely eradicated. No. Me and you could be triggered walking down the road or watching Netflix tonight, right? And we've got measures in place for that. But the environment is less emotionally charged and less triggering because of the anonymity. That's in a group setting. Now, one of the things I'm really excited about is the session plan combined with the anonymity means that drama therapy type work can be delivered by individuals who don't necessarily have to have any drama or therapy type qualifications or experience. So, for example, some of our current delivery team started as participants. So, shout out to Amy. Amy, as an example, is somebody, now I can speak about this because she's spoken about it on social media and traditional media. She started the programme as a resident in a residential rehab, and then she went through the kind of 12 to 16 week module, and then she came back as peer support volunteer, and then she went on to become a delivery team member. And it's because, but she doesn't have any drama or therapy type qualifications or experience.
She's learned it
so
from the program.
some of our delivery team have drama or theatre, type background, qualifications, experience. Some have a therapy, mental health type background, but some of them are lived experience. And for me, lived experience is key. Lived experience is crucial to everything that we do. We've got a lived experience panel. We've got lived experience on the board. Lived experience is kind of at the centre of everything that we do, and that's why people like you, obviously, well, the reality is we've all got lived experience. That's another thing. See people talking about people with lived experience of addictions.
I know.
That's pretty much everybody on the planet. Because pretty much everybody, if they're not in it, well, they might be addicted to sugar.
Sex, films,
the gym,
shopping,
whatever. You know what I mean? But most people have a relationship with addiction.
I think definitely the younger generation coming up the now, nearly every single one of them will have somebody in their family who has been affected by addiction now.
I think older generation as well.
I
don't know anybody. I mean, obviously, my parents were both alcoholics. My brother died of a heroin overdose. But most of my friends and other people that I know, they have at least one close family member who is in active addiction.
No, I mean my family. I've got a huge family, but again, there will be addiction problems that have ran through my family at points. And it's when you have that big family, you have successful people in your family. You've got then you've got this. It's a massive kind of. But no, honestly, I'm really excited. Let me ask you, how's it going? What's the success been like? Can you put it in numbers or?
And we've got that's the other thing as we were speaking about earlier. Glasgow University have been supportive when it comes to external evaluations. I spoke to one of the professors a while back about a PhD kind of study of the work, because it is unique. The nature of the programme, it's not drama therapy, but a drama therapy type programme delivered in an anonymous environment the way it is. To my knowledge, there's nothing else like it internationally.
No, I haven't. In the 15 years I was in prison, I've never seen anything like it.
So the PhD conversation took place. That's still ongoing. But Glasgow University suggested a master's student who did a dissertation on the programme. Shout out Catherine. She took part in the programme as a participant, submitted her dissertation, and gave us an impact study, which we were able to send out to, to prospect funders, etc. And then Catherine's supervising professor, Margaret Schinkel.
I think I know of Margaret.
She's currently doing another study into the kind of anonymity element. Like, what does that?
What does that mean?
What does it?
What does it actually mean?
What does it actually mean? Because the anonymity element is very unusual, especially in a recovery context. Because you know yourself, seeing fellowship meetings.
I would always. This is a weird thing, right? And it's made me think, because I would always say, don't disassociate from your trauma, and don't disassociate from your anonymous kind of thing. But you've made me rethink, because creating these characters is making me think that that's a good thing, because you're able to then use the character anonymously as yourself. And it probably, just the way your thinking is, you wouldn't be criticising anybody you love. You would be able to use that as an outlet.
And in a group environment, see if it's biographical, people become embarrassed.
Aye, definitely.
Sensitive.
Definitely.
They're being projected onto, and they're projecting onto other people. So by just taking it off the table, it creates an environment where actually you're not disidentifying, because just because nobody else in the room knows what's real and what's not real in relation to this character we're working on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not disidentifying. You're actually, to use the mum's alcoholism
Aye.
comparison, you're actually able to, in some cases, we know from feedback, participants are able to explore mum's alcoholism in a way that they have never done before.
No, I agree with you. I agree with
So
that.
that's interesting.
That is.
But we also, at the end of every session, our delivery team complete a summary sheet, list of attendees, hours attended, couple of sentences on engagement, some safeguarding, follow-up notes. So we record every session. And then at the end of the kind of 12 to 16 week module, every participant gets an exit interview. So we know that over the last 8 years, I can't remember the exact number, but it'll be in the region of 5,000-6,000 participants.
Wow.
Have been through the programme, either in a justice space or recovery space. Now, not all of them attended the full 12 to 16 weeks,
Aye.
but as I keep saying to our delivery team, what does a win look like? Right? So see if we've got 2 weekly sessions for 12 weeks, that's 24 sessions, that's 48 hours over a 12-week period, right? It's great if somebody joins week 1 and stays with us right up to the live event, right? But
I take it plant like week one, a planting the seed, didn't you? Like
no, you don't even need to join week 1 because the session plan is constructed in such a way and it's its own thing. Each individual session is its own thing, right? So what does a win look like for me? A win for me, see if somebody comes into a session and spends 2 hours not taking part, but listening. That's a win.
Definitely.
And they don't come back. But we've had them in the room for 10 hours, for 2 hours, right? Where they have been introduced to the concept of their authentic nature, the inner critic, the inner mentor, identifying the chat, developing a relationship with the inner mentor, some kind of skills and techniques that they can take away with them. That's a win. Now, our delivery team want to get 10 participants coming in a room, buzzing, characters, monologues, sketches.
I know.
Very hard. Sometimes you get groups where, but the reality is that's not going to happen in every case, you know?
We were talking about the shift, because obviously we're coming up to the end. We could have had another 2 hours probably here. But there is a shift, I think, in consciousness just now happening. And I think what you're doing is it's pioneering. I think it'll work. I think it'll take time to polish and get through, and obviously you know yourself, you're in these kind of worlds where security comes first, all this kind of stuff, and you could lose members just for any kind of number of reasons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not down to your programme. Do you know what I mean? Especially in the justice setting or the kind of addiction setting. But I think it's something that I've spoke about on here quite a lot, about how do we raise the awareness, and I think you've given me something for me to think about, which I've probably not went away for a lot of podcast thinking positively, but I think that you've gave me something to think about and go, that is something that could work. Do you know what I mean?
And by the way, see, when you talk about the big picture, I think, people like yourself have to be commended for the work that you're doing. I know that you've got a job and, you've got a family, and this takes up a lot of your time. But I do believe that when it comes to, the books that you've mentioned talk about the collective
consciousness
and the interconnectedness and the thought energy. And I do believe that more and more people like you that are creating this kind of content, which is being shared, is having a positive impact on society globally. Especially because more and more people now have stopped consuming traditional media and are even listening to the audio, maybe not watching our ugly mugs, but listening to the audio from these types of things. And with every day, you know, breath to breath, moment to moment, we move forward. And as more and more of this type of content is being shared, a change is starting to happen. And it's because of people like you that change is starting to happen. So,
no, I really appreciate it, Matt. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on and actually like being one of the people who have asked for an invoice as well. That's, Matt, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. And if there's anything at all that Social Sessions can do to help you with this, I'd be more than happy. As I say, it's gave me food for thought. But what I always do, I always kind of give the last wee 5 minutes just to the guest. Anything we've missed, anything that you'd like to speak about, anything that's going to happen in the future. I think this might be the only podcast that I've not really absolutely ridiculed the prison, you know what I mean? But no, I think it's been brilliant. Honestly, Mark, excellent. So on you go, last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like from my point of view, I switched my watch off. You need to tell me when it's 5 minutes. I mean, like as we said earlier, see when it comes to my work as a writer, my lived experience, my interest in self-awareness practice, my passion for the justice space and the recovery space. Each of those different things could be a 2-hour conversation. So it was always going to be very difficult for me and you to cram all of it in. But I suppose my encouragement, in terms of my vision for the programme, I want this programme to be in every UK prison, in every residential rehab, every community rehab, every community sentence group, and also have an opportunity to reach a mainstream audience. So that's my vision for the programme. I suppose I would just encourage people to, you know, if the work sounds of particular interest and they're maybe interested in finding out a bit more or volunteering, giving us some time, then reach out via any social media platform that you see this on, and share it, and just keep consuming content like this and sharing content like this, and as much as possible avoid traditional media because it's all lies.
I couldn't put it better, but I couldn't put it better myself. No, listen, thank you very much.
Cheers,
absolute
buddy.
pleasure having you. Thank you, Matt.
Cheers, buddy.